Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Carlo van de Weijer. Welcome, Carlo. During the break, I went down. It's the, I believe, -2 floor. Yeah. There is the place where there is a special room for kids.
Oh, yes.
We have mentioned the program for kids that was prepared by Deloitte. And Carlo was having a lecture there. He was speaking during the last coffee break.
Yes, that was nice. Yeah.
He talked about drones, for example. And he closed up his presentation with these words, I quote, "Live for the stupid idea and chase it."
Okay.
How would your life look different if you received this kind of advice when you were 8 or 9 years old?
Yes, that's exactly what your mother told you not to do, to chase for stupid ideas, yeah. Yeah, but it's easy. I work a lot with students. I used to work at TomTom and still work there a little bit, but now I work mainly at the university. And working with students is a sheer joy because they come up with the most stupid ideas. That's a unique talent they have. And we cherish that because the breakthrough of tomorrow is the stupid idea of yesterday. You can just develop and be 5% better, 10% better. That's common business. It's also very important, but your breakthrough used to be a stupid idea. Now, being in Silicon Valley a lot, there's a kind of religious belief, it's the other way around, that every stupid idea will be a breakthrough. And that's not true. 95% of stupid ideas are very stupid ideas. So that's the challenge. Find this one stupid idea to break through. That's what I try to teach those kids downstairs.
Industry in disruption, the future of mobility. And Carlo.
Thank you very much. Yeah, industry in disruption, talking about mobility, it's a typical industry that is in the midst of disruption, and I hope to be able to share some of my experience over there to also teach some lessons learned from other industries, because that's exactly what's happening. And just as I told you, this joy of working with students, because of these stupid ideas they come up with, it's just my student teams that come up with these ideas. Just an example, this racing car, they're now preparing it to drive without a driver. Now, it sounds a little bit stupid to look at a driving race without any drivers in it, but that's what they're developing at this moment. Same idea here. They said to me, and it's come, let's put solar cells on an electric car and then drive around with it. And I, with all my wisdom, knew sure that's not going to work. Solar cells on a car, that's just enough to power the left headlight and maybe the horn, if you're not driving in India because you need an extra generator for your horn over there. So that's what I told them, but they proved me wrong. They just continued to develop and made a car that looked a little bit different, so it fitted more solar cells and is very fuel effective. And they competed in a race in Australia, and they went from north to south with this car. This car does 130 kilometers per hour, it seats 5, and in the 3,000 kilometers they did in 5 days, they generated more power than they used. So at the evening they have to plug in this car just to discharge it. That's the thing. So they proved me wrong oftentimes, and even these boys and girls, a lot of girls by the way, they now made a company, and you can now order this car. This is a solar car, it's going to be on the market, and no, in the winter you will have to charge it every now and then. It has batteries, but in the summer there's a couple of months that you don't have to recharge it. It's running on the sun. I ordered one, by the way, so I hope they will indeed build this one. Now, they're living already in this future of mobility, where we know exactly why it won't work and they prove us wrong. And that's why how we challenge these people to run for these stupid ideas. Because even if you do not achieve this stupid idea, in the process going there, you will find other things that you otherwise would have never found. And I want to save you a little bit of time by just showing you the future of mobility, how it's being told by a lot of people, and an average TEDx movie. And you know what happens there? We're all self-driving cars. You do not own a car anymore because you just can order one. You order rides instead of a car. And this is the story of Sam and Sarah, and it just summarizes all these TEDx movies in, say, 1.5 minutes. You can see it's in the future because they have transparent screens. For some reason, we have transparent screens in the future. Always. And you see it's a processing payment, and the system knows that she has to be picked up 9:08 in order to be on work and time. So she has another cover. Here it is. Car just comes in front of it. There's no steering wheel, self-driving. Comes from another gig. It has a mood detector, which is a very annoying thing if you're in a bad mood. It just tells you in a bad mood, but it adapts the color so everybody can get out of the way. And at a certain moment, the system knows a shortcut. You see the base is charging inductively. and she's flying off. Here's Sam, that's her husband, or boyfriend, I guess. And he has a Google Glass. Sam is alone in a park without sporting gear. That's very suspicious. But privacy, you know, we heard about privacy earlier on from Daniel, so that's too dangerous. He's going to be picked up, so. You see, by the way, it's not a very big commercial success yet. Huh? You see, there's a big upset potential over here. So, if you still have money left, try and invest in this kind of stuff. We even have trains in the future. They just gather around these pods together and shoot them in one direction. This is interesting. Here you see that 4 of these drones arrive. If drones would do a substantial part of Prague traffic, you would see about 40 to 50,000 drones in the air in the morning. I don't think that's really beneficial to the quality of living here. But just, I don't know, just imagine. Oh, here the system brings them together, and very clearly they're very happy to see each other again. So they're going to have a latte macchiato together and talk about feelings. So they split up 2 weeks later. That's a little bit of pity. So they're available from 2025 onwards. Let's take back to this. This might be a stupid idea, but again, I have to warn you, there might be a breakthrough in this as well. What is this about this self-driving system that we already hear about a lot of times for a couple of years? And actually, this is also what's happening in the automotive industry. This is where most of the research money goes to: autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. It used to be smaller engines and gearboxes and these kind of things. No, this is the 4 things where most of the research money goes to. And Google exaggerates it a little bit. They go full Monty. They predict that in 5 years, everybody will drive these kind of cars. And this is a car without a steering wheel, without any panels. It's a kind of horizontal elevator. You get in somewhere, you get out somewhere else. And they say we have to get the driver out of the loop because we cannot trust the driver. The driver is responsible for 95% of the accidents. Now, I tend to a little bit disagree with that. I do agree that 95% is human error, but it doesn't mean that everybody always makes his mistakes. Even the worst driver does a fairly good job 99.99% of the time. We have to get them out of the loop 0.01% of the time, but to get them out of the loop is a bit of a problem. And Google said in 5 years from now, the Volkswagen will be the Kodak, the Skoda will be the Kodak, the Mercedes will be the Kodak, and everybody would just order a ride 5 years from now, and they said this 7 years ago. And Volkswagen had one of their worst years because of all the diesel things still. Financially, they had one of their best years last thing. So it's not happened yet. And it might have something to do. This is a little bit a theoretical picture. But if you look at the encyclopedia industry, the music industry, and the camera industry, it went from a physical thing to a total cyber thing. It's fully digital at this moment. So actually, it's now all in this corner. It's 100% digital, and that's when disruption comes very fast. But transport, you're still a little bit in a physical world. We still have transport people of 75 kilograms in average, or parcels, or what have you. It's a physical thing. So it doesn't go that fast. Now, the truth is in the middle. But if you come from a physical industry, it's not going as fast if you're not being replaced by a total cyber alternative. So that's the thing. But there's one other thing I want to share with you. You have to always, by the way, ask, where am I in this process? Are you in a physical world, and do you want to make the move to this shared cyber-physical system, or are you going to be disrupted by a new company, or going to be the disruptor that starts off in the digital area? And I do not know when, depending on the industry, what's the best thing, but you have to make the move anyhow to the middle. The fact that you're here, that's already a good sign to that. But the other thing, why I think we haven't seen a lot of driverless vehicles yet, although there are vehicles that do parts of that drive autonomously, you haven't got any driverless vehicles, it's because of this. This is actually this is an artist picture from James Bridle. It calls Autonomous Traps. And he says, you can clearly see there's a dotted road line on the outside, there's a continued line on the inside, so legally you're allowed to go in, but you're not allowed to go out. He has a big plan of catching all the autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles cannot flexibly interpret the law, and that's the thing. I've driven through Prague, and there's a lot of unwritten rules here in order to survive traffic. And Prague is not alone. I'll just take you to Amsterdam. And this is a small clip, and just imagine that this Google car will come in from the right. It's a Range Rover, but just imagine that's the Google car. and it's nicely programmed to follow the law. Now, I don't know exactly how your behavior is, but I do know that the law in Prague and in Czechia also says that if you're approaching a pedestrian crossing and somebody is showing the intention to cross the road, that you have to stop. What would a Google car do if somebody shows the intention to cross the road but does not actually cross the road? How long would it wait? Let's see what these cars are doing. So Range Rover comes in, and it brakes. You know, this is typically Dutch with a lot of bicycles that don't obey the rule as well. But here, it stops a little bit late, but it stops. And these people keep on showing the intention, do not cross the road. And after 3 seconds, it breaks the law. But hey, another example. There's a Porsche coming from the right. The Porsche has to give way to this bike, also to our car. But hey, it's a Porsche, it just takes way. But our bike is fully fine with that because it makes it pass easier. Now, there's a bike coming from the left. It has way to our car, but it suddenly goes to the left, so nothing happened. These bikes do not take the official distance that is prescribed in law. And also, this guy had way to our car, but he thinks, get out of the way, my car, take way, etc. So these are all flexible interpretation of the law. If this would have been a Google car, nicely programmed to follow the law, it would park itself after a couple of minutes and start crying very loudly. And that's what happens in real life. It's true. Here's the essence to my point of view that not only goes for self-driving cars, for any robot in the future. How should we organize this flexible interpretation of rules? That not only goes for traffic, that goes for your company as well. If you want your people all to just color inside the lines, then you probably will be bankrupt quite soon. That's not a sound company. So the question is how to institutionalize coloring outside the lines, because that's what you want your employees also to do, because otherwise you have to kind of work to rule. The unions use this in order to push, to pressurize the companies. Actually, the Catholics have a good system for that, the confession. And also Warren Buffett, you know, this big investor, he used the newspaper principle. He said, okay, not everything is laid down in rules. If you have to decide something, decide, don't call me, but just think about the newspaper principle. What if the newspaper finds out about your decisions and comes to you and asks the question, why did you decide as such? And if you say, okay, I can explain, then do it. If you think, oh, newspaper better don't find out, don't do it. That's the newspaper. I can put it a little bit more extreme. I think that in the future, the coloring inside the line jobs do not add value. That's where we need the robots for. I think we should not allow robots to color outside the lines. That's a very dangerous situation. We will speed up the end of humanity. So the only added value that we as human beings is that we are able to color outside the lines. Take that with you. Should we then just accept that all these people die in traffic? It's about 3,000 to 3,500 people dying in traffic every day. A 9/11 every day. There's a very strange tolerance to that. Worldwide, 3,000 to 3,500 people die. Should we just accept that? No, we should take over control in this 0.01% of the time that the bad driver does a bad job. Or in your case, the 0.00001% of the time. So you get all these kind of systems, you know, the brochure of cars is full of it. And a lot of people say, yeah, but then people start behaving more dangerously. No, there's enough scientific proof that because of all these new kind of computerized systems that can take over, if necessary, often without you noticing. So you take a curve, the car saves your life 4 times, and you think, oh, I'm such a good driver. Leave it as such, that's good, because then probably you get a safer system. It's because of these kind of systems that Volvo says that their vision is by 2020 nobody would be seriously injured or killed in a new Volvo car. It's also buy a new Volvo car. It's not that they're killing everybody around just to save their own drivers. It's also buy a new Volvo car. And with all these kind of systems, they say that it is. There are 2 problems with this one. The one is that not every car has these kind of systems yet. Therefore, the European Union has about 15 new technologies. You don't have to read them. If you want my slides, just link me in, I'll give you a copy. But these are the 15 things that are going to be mandatory from 2021 onwards. We have to have more of these systems in the cars that we are driving. And even second-hand cars can be retrofitted with these kind of systems. We should really pressurize on that one. 60 to 70% of the accidents that happen today could have been presented with technology that's on the shelf. So we have technology on the shelf that could already save more than half of the human lives that we now have. The other thing is that We should also try to prevent that we rely too much on these kind of systems. Like you saw Amin with his example of this Tesla preventing an accident to happen. That, by the way, happened 5 kilometers from my house. I heard that accident almost. But that doesn't mean that Tesla never have accidents. On the contrary, Tesla have more accidents than other cars because people tend to rely on these systems a little bit too much. And that's the thing. Yeah, this is a little bit, here's your new Tesla. That's a little bit, but maybe, let's stop laughing because there are also some severe accidents that happened. This guy crashed on this concrete wall. It's near Silicon Valley, near Singularity University this happened. And he even speeded up in the last couple of meters and he just crashed on that wall. And there was a journalist that went there a couple days later and just started researching what happened there. What happened there? So this is 500 meters ahead of this, so he drove that a few times, and at a certain moment he saw something that he thought, okay, that could be the case here. So here you see, I'll start this clip. At a certain moment you see, this is where we was driving, you see that these repair cuts, you know, the limit, the border between two of these concrete platters was moving to the left. And because of this bad maintenance infrastructure in the United States, and there's maybe some solar radiation, the computer thought that this was the way to follow. And at a certain moment, you see that it got confirmed by the lines, so this car was driving here, and he didn't see any traffic ahead of him, so he just continued and even accelerated, and that's where he hit this concrete post. Now, it's so easy for us human beings to see that you should not follow this repair cut, but should follow this badly maintained white line. Yet, the computer didn't know. And the guy didn't pay attention. He had too much trust in his automotive system at this moment. And this is what Anita showed you some of these pictures as well. What's so very difficult for computers as us to distinguish what's reality. Like these kind of things. What's a labradoodle and what's the fried chicken? Here another one. This is where computers are mixing up. And I have another proof of this that you might recognize. You might recognize these ones. The traffic lights, buses, the bicycles. Every time you have to prove that you are not a computer. Oh, wait a minute. Yes. Every time you have to prove that you're not a computer, they show you traffic situations. 80% of the time it's a traffic situation. That says two things. The one thing is that if you have to prove that you are not a robot by indicating traffic situations, it takes a little bit of time before we leave the traffic to robots. Do you agree with that? Because apparently if you recognize this stuff, you're not a computer. The other thing is that every time you click in there, probably this data will be used in order to make these performance better. This is input data in order for cars to recognize all these traffic situations better. And that's something that, of course, improves the cars. And it's not only us helping the system to become better, it's always the cars themselves. This is the team that does this autonomous racing car. So there's no driver behind the wheel. And look at this car driving a little bit clumsy, because it doesn't know where to go to. The only thing it knows is that blue is on the left and yellow is on the right. So here you see the data it's building its database on a road, and it's kind of gently. Now, just around the curve, you will see that it knows it has been there, and it certainly knows where it's heading, and it uses its data from the former lab. Here you see, in a second or something, it knows where it's at. Here, it has the track. Look what happens. This is with knowledge of the trace. Now, it's a bit overconfident here, you see? It took one pylon. But the next time, it's a little bit wiser and it will not hit that pylon anymore, mainly because it's gone now. So that's it. And this is the future system. So when a car makes a mistake, nowadays, when you make a mistake in your car, your heart rate will go up, and next time you're a little bit wiser. You will not do that again. When a car makes a mistake and it's connected to all the other cars via an infrastructure with these computers and wheels, then everybody gets this experience of the old cars. And this is the way to make it better, much faster. So I do believe that in due course we will have inherently safe vehicles. But is this the biggest disruption? Isn't there other disruptions? What happens to any industry that's been digitized? And I don't know who was here last year, but we did share with you the theory of the 6Ds. of Singularity University. That's when digitization takes place. The first product is a little bit deceptive. The first digital camera was this big. It had 0.001 megapixel, and it took about 7 minutes to upload your photo on a floppy disk or whatever you. And a lot of people said, "Ah, that's not going to work, this digital camera." That's, huh? And then Moore's law comes in, and it happens within a couple of years, where Kodak thought it had 10 years, it happened 2 years. And what you always see is dematerialization, demonetization, and democratization. That always happens. Interesting case, you don't need an encyclopedia, you don't need a camera, you don't need a CD to have your music, so the music is for free, and everybody can make use of it. Information, you don't need an encyclopedia. A kid in Africa nowadays has access to more information than the President of the United States had 20 years ago. Or the President of the United States uses today, but that's another problem we're not going to solve here. With music, it's an interesting thing. This is important for also your industry. When you're being demonetized, music is free to my children. I spend a lot of money on CDs and LPs. It's free to them. On the other hand, they still spend the same amount of money of their budget, the same part of the budget, because they go to festivals and concerts much more than I did. So where the medium is for free, you're going to pay for the experience. This also happened to food. You can have food almost free. It doesn't cost anything. It used to cost 70% of our economy because we had so much farmers. Nowadays, it's so cheap, but still, we like to spend money on the experience on a Michelin star dinner. That's the thing that always happens. That's an interesting one. And so that's a consequence. That's something we can predict that is going to happen also to the automotive industry, because apparently at this moment the digitization is clearly taking place. The other thing that you can predict is that us human beings will remain the same. We still are relatively predictable kind of reptile brain on legs, and actually this is what thrives us, what moves us. We have the physiological needs, the food, water, and if we got that sorted out, we start caring about the safety needs and then belongingness, etc. And at this moment, we are climbing the Maslow's ladder, and that's what thrives us. Just as a side remark, by the way, these used to be the typical male jobs. This is more kind of a female strength. This is what we already automized, so here come the women in the future. That's the thing. So prepare for that. But anything, there's no mobility here. But apparently, mobility is also in our genes. In order to reach all these kind of things, we decided, as prehistoric human beings, that it was beneficial to leave our cave. To stay in your cave was not so good for your survival chances, for reproduction chances, etc. So we left our cage for a very predictable 1 hour and 6 minutes. That's Marchetti's constant. He said this. 1 hour and 6 minutes is what, in average, we always are active with mobility. And this is one of the many research supporting that, from poor countries to rich countries, measured over several decades. So we're always a little bit more than 1 hour busy with mobility. And our body is engineered as such in evolution times. I don't know if any of you uses such a step counter on their smartphone. So what does the doctor said is an optimal number of steps per day? 10,000. Exactly. So you have such a lazy day, that's only 3,000 when you're just wandering around the house. The difference is 7,000, and there's just a little bit more than 1 hour of walking. That's what we used to do in prehistoric times. That's how we're engineered. The only thing that changes because of technology is the distance that we could drive with this. And that's an exponential change. So we used to walk a little bit, and then we know how to use horses, and then we invented the train, and then we ate all the horses because they were so polluting. Because they produce 15 kilograms of manure. Shit, you know. And New York had 100,000 horses, so you can do the math on that one. But the big saver of the environment, the car, came to solve that problem. And we keep on going further and further. So it's going to change. But where's this demonetization? Where's the dematerialization if we still are more and more traveling instead of less? I think there are some trends that you see now. This is a very important one. The electrification of vehicles. The 220 for electric vehicles, that means in an electric vehicle there are 200 important components, out of which 20 are rotating. An important component is a component and it breaks down that you have to go to the garage. A conventional vehicle has 1,400 components, out of which 900 rotate or oscillate. It's a big mistake, and also it makes it much more reliable. You don't need maintenance Look at the engine, 300 kilowatts of an Audi or 300 kilowatts of a Tesla. You can already sense that also the maintenance revenue is going down dramatically. And there's only one important and then expensive component, and that's the battery. And look what the volume effects already did there. A volume effects is just a standard rule in industry. If you make twice as much products, the price will go down 20 to 22%. And that's happening to batteries at this moment. And the consequence of this, that in due course, already on not too long term, it's going to be cheaper to drive an electric vehicle than a conventional vehicle. And Roland Berger even said about 100 euros per month. 100 euros per month. Less than 10 cents per kilometer. Just to indicate, if you want to drive public transport in the Netherlands, it costs you 4 times as much. And still needs a lot of subsidy on top of that. That's a problem of public transport. It has to adapt to that, make it more demand-driven and all this kind of stuff. So that's a challenge. And the other challenge is this one. It's going to be cheaper, or it's going to be more comfortable as well. Because I don't see a lot of driverless vehicles in the future, but I do see a lot of automated vehicles that take over maybe 99% of the drive. So at least it starts with the very boring bits like driving in a traffic jam. Nobody wants to drive in a traffic jam, but if the car takes over, you don't mind so much anymore. I'm also in the lucky situation that I have a car that drives in the traffic jam, and I do not mind the traffic jam anymore. My congestion problem is solved, not because the congestion is solved, but the problem is solved. And this made, if you take the nasty bits out of driving, the entire drive quality goes up, and we're going to love our car maybe even more than we already do today. And then we have another problem, and that's the space. Certainly in cities, we do not have the space to occupy all these cars. And you can have an Uber, but that doesn't really help. And you can have a driverless vehicle, and that doesn't help. It makes it even worse because there are also empty vehicles driving around. I don't think a city needs driverless cars. It needs carless drivers. People on a bike or using a sensible form of public transport. And of course, the bike is a nice thing. This is the biggest popping up modality at this moment, and I saw them in Prague as well, these little electric steps. Regulation is not ready for it yet, but still they pop up everywhere. But it's not only that kind of bikes, it's also the bike. I'm very proud to be from a country that's a little bit leading in bikes. That's part of our culture. We don't have so much mountains, that helps. This is our Prime Minister visiting the King. And this officially, this is not a setup. This is a very boring, normal guy, the Prime Minister. That's nice to have a Prime Minister that's not too fancy, but he goes on his bike. Why he locks his bike with the guards over there is still a little bit of a question. But this is a nice thing. And the bikes is maybe something like the traffic of the future, because there's only a few regulations, official rules for bikes, and nobody sticks to these rules. So they just do this. And this is a thing that happened behind Amsterdam Central Station. There used to be a bicycle path here, with a pedestrian crossing, but nobody took notice. This is where the ferry boats just puke out 300 anarchistic bikers, etc., every few minutes. And a lot of accidents happen there. And they want to make a tunnel, was not possible, so they decided to make it one big concrete thing. And here you see the power of a distributed system, because without any rule that can be described, people just sort out for some way and there's no conflict. This is chaos in practice. And the number of accidents went down with a factor 10. And there's no way to describe that, how this scientifically worked. And if a disruption comes in, and this is a good thing, there's a disruption coming up. So this truck used to block the cycle paths, but there is no cycle path, so the system adapts. This is a lesson for your organization. A lot of people complain about chaos, but a little bit of chaos makes you so much more agile to cope with changes, makes you anti-fragile. So that's a good thing, maybe a lesson learned. I want to close off by actually just philosophizing a little bit from where is this heading? Are we going to go more and farther and so? Do we have to do 10,000 kilometers per day in due course? Or should we use this huge power of technology in order to make things better? This also goes for any industry. There's no real societal or economical benefit to go faster and further. Let's try to invest it in making better. And start with the cities. Because at this moment, some cities use more than 50% of their surface just for the mobility system. As if you build your house as this. You don't do that. This is how we design cities. And you see more and more of trends that we are going to take back to cities for its initial purpose. A place to a place to converse, to dine, to trade, to protest. That's what we built cities for, and not to facilitate mobility. Now, these pictures are the same camera angle in Amsterdam, and you see that the cars have disappeared, but there are 4 times more cars in the Netherlands if you compare these 2 times. So you can't do this in a nice thing. Same happens in New York and with the High Line. Same happens in the Malostranski Namesti. Sorry, I tried. This is Malostranski Namesti. Yeah, I say at least 3 times. I asked a Polish woman to do it, but that's maybe not a good idea. Now, I don't want to chase the cars out, I just have to be a little bit more sensible. There's no way that if you did this, that you're going to do back so. This is not helped by self-driving cars. We need self-walking pedestrians. That's a better thing for a city. That's what we're going to head to. There's only one technology I want to close off with that might help for the future to achieve both. To go much further and to do it on a better, safer, cheaper way, and that's virtual reality. And with virtual reality, I do not mean virtual reality that I don't have to go to Australia to see my colleague, but just to have this 1 hour and 6 minutes of travel demand, but then just simulate it with my glasses on. Then I can choose my own car, I can choose the route, I can choose the weather, I take a cabrio, I go in the south of France, you can choose your passenger as well, and she listens to you. That's the difference. So, and then you do your driving for 1 hour and 6 minutes and you put off your glasses. Or no, rather you shift off your virtual reality because in due course you link directly to your nerves, you don't need the glasses. So you just shift off your virtual reality and you see your apartment in Almere in the Netherlands. It's the ugliest place on earth, and it rains outside, and you see your wife and your ugly children. And you're probably going to shift back virtual reality immediately again. Now, there are some people that claim that this moment is already behind us. Both Elon Musk and Yuval Harari have separate theories that the chance that we're not living in a simulated world is only 1 on a billion. So there's a fair chance that everything that's happening here is just your simulation program of today. This is not real. And I just stepped outside here and I saw how beautiful Prague is again. I've been here a lot of times, and it's getting more beautiful, and the weather was fantastic. It's a little bit suspicious. You already live in paradise. You're in a function that allows you, that brings you here to this conference. That's also a luxury 1% or less. So it's a little bit suspicious. This must be a simulation. I ordered 4.5 liters of beer yesterday. I had to pay only 5.5 euros. That's too good to be true. So, sorry to tell you this, but this is not real. The 1 on a billion chance that this is real, I just want to leave you with how to survive this exponentialism. The first thing is don't fear this demonetization. Make sure that you just add experience to your product. And not be the one that makes the coffee, but be the one that sells this coffee on the San Marco Square in Venice for 15 euros and still make people happy. Not be the music producer, be the festival organizer in your industry. That's the thing what you have to do. Add experience. If you can't predict the future, because predicting the future always has been difficult, especially if you do it beforehand. It's going to be harder to predict the future, but you can prepare. Be as agile as possible. Your agile coefficient, that's an important thing. Be able to change routes. Color outside the lines a little bit. But there's no innovation inside of it. And foster a bit of chaos. And these are all things that your mother told you not to do. More important ever than do that. And reply to the needs of the reptile brain. Up in the Maslow, new jobs and the new businesses. And move from quality to quality, from quantity to quality. But there's so much quality here that I don't have to tell you that. The only thing is important to keep on moving. Because that's actually what Einstein said already. Living life is more or less like riding a bicycle. It's relatively stable as long as you keep on moving. Good luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.